And today we have a very controversial topic. Maybe that's why our guests did not show up. They don't want to face the fire, but that's okay because I can talk enough for 2-3 people. And Ralph, you're pretty good for 1 or 2 people. So we'll be able to do this today as we talk about what would Jesus do in regards to different sexuality and practices today on King's Korner. Well, welcome back today for King's Korner. I see that we just got one of our guests to come in, and that's good. I'm so glad to see him here today. But it's a controversial subject that we're talking about today. So if the guest didn't come, I was going to say they were too scared to come on, Ralph, and talk to us about it, because we know King's Korner is a place where we are looking for concrete community conversations, and we're not trying to like dance around anything. We're trying to make sure that we can ask questions that people feel uncomfortable talking about, because if you don't talk about it, then that means it never happened, or you can't do anything about it. Today's subject: what would Jesus do? That is the title, and we're going to talk about 2 different aspects of what Jesus would do. What are God's pronouns? And also, does the church and the community actually encourage down low behavior? That's right. We're going to go there today. Ralph, how you doing? Welcome.
Glad I'm doing good. I'm ready to enter into these conversations and look forward to really discussing this subject matter.
Yeah, this is one of the conversations I've been wanting to have for a little bit of time. And it's not anything personal, but it's something that needs to be talked about. It's about what we want to accomplish here on our show. So to help us out, our first guest is Reverend Lydell Brown, pastor and founder at Burning Bush Family Life Center, Inc. And he's also involved in something called Pastor's Lab. I'm going to ask him to talk about that as well. But right now, I understand, and Reverend Lydell, you go ahead and keep me honest. You're the acting director for 224, the Eco Space? So welcome to King's Korner, Reverend Brown.
All right. Glad to be here. Glad to be here. Excuse me for my tardiness. I was on the highway trying to break records to get here, coming from Hartford. But God is good. Yeah. Officially, I am the interim CEO of the Conference of Churches. The 224 is our social enterprise. So it's one of our programs.
I'm glad you were able to explain that, because the 224 is a place that holds and houses many different events and activities. I just didn't remember, you said Council of Churches?
Conference
of Churches.
Yes.
That's here in Hartford, Connecticut. Talk to me about Pastor's Lab. What's that whole concept?
So the Pastor's Lab, I've been in ministry now for about 30 years and been pastoring for 26. And I'm the type of person that when I need to have time alone with God so I can just, meditate and think about some things, get my messages together, get programs together. And so it's in that place that I call the lab, that I hear from God and inspired to do some things. And so when I go into the Pastor's Lab, that's where I go in to come out to add to the number of believers and disciples, and have innovative programs and things that can allow people to find themselves in God.
So that's where you go and prepare for your scripture or your lesson for that Sunday, or
lessons, my workshops, Bible studies. And then sometimes it's just a time where I just need to go into the Pastor's Lab to close off the world, because, the world can be really loud. You know what I mean? And so I go in there just to get away. My wife doesn't bother me. I have a 8-year-old grandson who is my shadow, even he doesn't bother me when I go into the pastor's lab. So it's a good place to be.
I like the concept. My writers group that I have where I go into myself is underneath the purple tent.
Gotcha.
And the rest of us, me and Ralph, we just got a man cave. You got a whole lab. Okay. I can't fight with that. Thank you for joining us today, Pastor Brown.
Glad to be here.
Can I just go ahead and call you Lydell? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what God calls me. So
okay.
There you go.
But that's your father. He could do that.
Absolutely.
So, what would Jesus do, or what would he say? The first question that I have to ask today is, what are God's pronouns? And what I mean by that is this. What it means when someone puts pronouns in their email signature or on a badge that they have on them, say you go to a conference or some sort of meeting and they write their name on there, and underneath that they may have pronouns. So when a person includes their gender pronouns on their email signature or on a name tag when introducing themselves, etc., they're simply taking the guesswork away from you. Mm-hmm. It's their way of saying, when you refer to me using pronouns opposed to my name, these are the pronouns I'd like to use. Further, he, him, his, used for someone who says they identify as male or masculine. She, her, or hers, used for someone who says they identify as female or feminine. They, them, and theirs, used for someone who doesn't particularly identify with either female or male pronouns. Now, had you heard of this phenomenon before, Lydell?
Oh, yes.
Where did you encounter it?
Well, because I'm with the Conference of Churches, we work with various other groups, various other people. And so when it started being more prevalent, of course, I started scratching my head, and I am a Googler. So I would get on Google real quick, and I love to ask questions. And so I said, okay, I get it. I do get it. Sometimes you just don't identify yourself with this amount, or with the folk over here, or with the folk over here, or with the folk here. And so there's nothing wrong with you actually saying, this is who I identify with. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
So I went to a conference at University of Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time that I saw it. I saw a name tag, and then the pronouns were underneath. And I was actually doing a workshop. And during the workshop, I had to refer to the people who would come to the workshop. And I'm telling you, if I did not get the pronoun right, they were getting me straight.
Oh, yes.
So I was like off my game. Like, I have a talk show here, and I do a lot for my living as a freelance speaker. So obviously I have the gift for gab. But I'm telling you, man, that threw me off my game. I could hardly do my workshop. Because I didn't want to offend. And King's Korner doesn't want to offend. And that's one of the reasons why we want to have this talk today, so that other people out here in the community, other brothers, other queens, other kings, we can hear this, and this will enable us, because we're all about community building, and you can't community build if you can't communicate with one another. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this, but I was off my game. I was messing up my whole of speech, and I had that together. I'd done it many times, and because I didn't want to offend anyone, but people were like, no, I said it's him. Oh, I said it's her. I'm so sorry. Could I just call you your name?
Gotcha.
So it's something new that we got to get used to. I'm glad to hear that you've heard of it before, and that you're used to it, or you're getting used to it. I'm not going to name anybody, my co-host, who did not hear this before. I'm not going to say any names, but they know.
No, I didn't. That's new to me. I wasn't exposed to it. Gotcha. I'm not going to lie. But like you say, I want to learn and find out how to really interact with people that are in that situation.
Exactly. I can't work out any wonderful communal efforts I can't work out any issues or anything if I don't know the language. And I'm a wordsmith. I try to learn things. So that's one of the things I'm trying to impart here today. Here's the $1,000 question. Let's just keep it at $1,000. What are God's pronouns? And I asked that question for a particular reason. First, let me see if I can get an answer from Ralph and or Lydell.
Okay.
No.
I'll chime in. So years ago, when I used to pastor in a mainline African American church, I was inspired to start a new movement. So I had pastored in a mainline African American church for 14 years. And all of a sudden, God told me, I need for you to leave that church and start another work. Now, my daddy was a pastor in that same mainline for 40 years. So it was hard leaving. But when God wants you to do something, he's going to win. So you might as well stop fighting and go ahead and do what you got to do. And so he gave me the name Burning Bush Family Life Center. And so when I started to really take apart what that burning bush meant, when God told Moses, he says, "Take off thy shoes, for where thy stand is holy ground." Now, he wasn't saying that to Moses to tell Moses that you're not going to be comfortable and all of he was telling him to take off his shoes because he was inviting him to a place that's safe, to a place where he can be himself, a safe place. And so I was like, okay, God, I understand what you're saying. You want me to start a movement where folk feel safe, where when they walk in the door, they can take their shoes off, the spirituality of it, and not feel looked upon and not feel like people are scanning them up and down to see if they're good enough, because the church does that. It makes people feel like they don't belong. And that's the one thing that I did not want to happen. Now, when you asked me that question, if something bubbled up right away. So Moses, he simply asked God this question. He said, when I go back, who should I say sent me? And God told him, tell him that I am have sent you. And so when I think about pronouns of God, God let us know right then and there that I can be whatever I need to be to you. And each person needs God for different reasons. Some of us need him because we've been harmed and we've been hurt. So we need someone to help us heal. Some of us need him because need God because we never had a father that was there, or we never had a mother that was there. Or we feel like we just don't fit in. So the pronouns of God is simply he's who exactly who we need him to be or need her to be, because he has both attributes. He has female attributes and he has male attributes. And so the God that sits high and looks low can be everything that we need for God to be in our lives. And I try to take the gender out of it, yes, because I grew up in a fire and brimstone household in church, and because traditionally God was pushed on me as being a man and having man attributes. And even when we do the Lord's Prayer, our Father. But one thing that I do know is that I did not start to be complete in who I am until I started recognizing the female traits I have in my life too, that there's some tenderness and there's some softness there. And I got those things from God. You know what I mean? Yeah, I might have emulated some things from my mother, emulated some things from my father, but when you ask those questions, pronouns of God, you can't figure them out, but you just know that God can be whatever we need for him to be. So that's my answer on today.
I love that answer. I am that I am.
I am that I am.
I love
that I am. Yeah.
I can't top that. Ralph, I'm not even asking you to top it. do you have another answer, or is that's the answer?
I think that's the answer. I think when you reflect on what God would say or what God would do is basically guiding you to the best that you can be, you know. And I think that's really what the purpose is, to really give you the skills and the guidance to really perform to your fullest potential and interact with mankind. You know, just do what you can to be your brother's keeper in some respects.
Yeah. You know, like Lydell said, I love that answer. I am, but I guess when I thought about this the first time, I thought, you know, but isn't there a passage in the Bible that says God created Jesus in his likeness? And so Jesus came to us on earth as a man. So it was hard for me to separate it. That was one aspect of what I heard. And then for people who say that, you know, God is such an omnipotent being of energy that he or she or it cannot be simplified down to the thinkings of what man thinks it is. So you put it. So I was like, I need to ask this question. I mean, I just don't have the answer, and I'm a little confused. And if I was confused about it, I'm wondering who else might have been.
Understand.
So that's actually where that came from. But as we talk about the pronouns, many times I see that the pronouns are being used by members of the LGBTQ community. That's the conference that I actually have. I went to, and I told you I was messing it all up. They had asked my writers group to go there and to present some workshops. So I went there and I presented the workshop, and they were vehement about making sure that I had the right pronouns. But when I'm involved with the LGBTQ community and trying to service, listen, hear, offer product to them, to let them know that I am a friend of, that, you know, I want to work with members of the LGBTQ community. One of the things that I hear is basically that the church and the community encourage certain behaviors. And one that is something that I wanted to talk about was the culture of men and or women who are living on the down low.
Sure.
So the primary question here is, does the church and or the community actually encourage down low behavior? What's your thinking?
So around 8 years ago, I was asked to go to St. Joseph's to do their Black History program. It was me and Dr. Betts who went there. And there was a gentleman sitting there, like I used to love to wear the bow ties. I still do. It's just, you know, we've been in the pandemic, so I ain't had no place to wear them. So I haven't worn a bow tie and suit in a long time. But there sitting next to me was a brother who had a bald head, manicured beard. I was actually getting kind of jealous because I'm going to be 60 this year. I can't grow a beard, still can't grow a beard. But his beard was combed down, had on the bow tie, and we just started talking. And then all of a sudden we got into the conversation, and come to find out that he was transgender. And he said some things where I just had to sit there and take it. He said, you know, before I switched, the church loved me. Said they loved me, especially on Saturday nights. They hated me on Sunday morning, though.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm putting it out there the same way it was given to me. No chaser. That's what it was.
I'm confused. Well, okay.
Okay. No, this was before he started to switch. So people knew about his lifestyle or her lifestyle. How on Saturday night they knew that this person wanted to switch over to being a male, all right, and it was acceptable with people who were in the church who were out with this person, all right, and accepted them. But then on Sunday morning, when this person went to church, they didn't like him or her.
Yeah.
And so at that time, he had switched fully. And so he was telling me, he says, the church made me do this. He said, the church will make you lie. You have to be who the church thinks it, the church tells you who you're supposed to be. And said, so what it made me do is that it made me walk around in a lie. And so I don't know if the church makes people stay in the closet. I just think that the church does it in such a way where you think that you're not going to be accepted. So instead of you being the true, genuine you be what you think the church says you should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, go ahead. I don't think they encourage it. I think, again, it raises questions about your femininity or your masculinity.
Absolutely.
And your role in the family and the community.
Yep.
Do you think that the problem is that it's taboo because you're a Black person, or is it because of religion that it's taboo, or are the two intertwined? Because we're really talking about the Black community, but I want to know how related they are.
It's intertwined, definitely intertwined, because, and then it's an oxymoron too, because if you're talented in music, sometimes they turn a blind eye, right? Because you have made the praise and worship team all that they can be. So right. I think that we need to be consistent. Now, when it comes, I can only talk about me. My job is just to love whoever walks through that door. That's my job. My job to love whoever comes through that door, and then whatever's going on with you personally, let you and your God settle that.
So you're not judging.
Oh no.
I'm ministering to whoever comes in the door.
Absolutely.
And that saying that you said, "Be all you can be," is good for the army, but not for the church, eh?
That's right. But I will tell you this though. I think my daddy, because I've grown in ways that my dad didn't have a chance to. My dad today probably couldn't pastor the church. He would have a hard time. Yep.
So it's okay. That to me that denotes that it's generational.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So here's the question. It's generational, and people are clinging to things that they believe are wrong because it doesn't come from the Bible, or the Bible says something completely different from that lifestyle, contradictory to that lifestyle.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the way they were brought up and
yes.
the different indoctrination that you learn from being a child all the way up. The role of a man and the role of a woman and things of that nature. They kind of stick into those philosophies.
There were no gray areas. There were gray areas, but they weren't talked about.
Right.
Because I don't think this subject is something that just got invented this year.
No. It's been with us. There are people in the church that are known to be feminine or whatever, and they're accepted, and then there are those who are not. And so it goes both ways. I think it depends on the spirit that the person has towards his fellow man.
Yeah.
Did Jesus say anything about homosexuality at all?
One thing I remember him saying is that I've come for the sick. For the well have no physician, have no need of a physician, and I come not to condemn, but to save. And I think that's everybody. So I think one of the problems is that those who don't have a problem with their sexuality are quick to point the finger. It's just like the person who doesn't have a problem with smoking. They're quick to tell somebody you need to stop smoking. You know what I mean? Unless you're wrestling with that, then I think that you should keep your mouth off of that. and encourage them just to find out, to come to some type of peacefulness in their own mind. But one of the things that I realize is that so-called Christians in America, we're the most judgmental folk there is. Case in point, there's a restaurant up in Massachusetts that on Sundays before the pandemic, they call it Church Day. And the employees there hate to work on that day. But because they say this is when the most meanest folk come to the restaurant.
Oh man. So church folk are getting a reputation.
Well, we have this thing we call churchy. See, I don't want to be churchy. I want to have a relationship with God where I know how I act is going to come back. Either I'm going to reap something good, or I'm going to reap something bad. You know what I mean? But the Bible tells us to let our speech be seasoned with grace, that we know how to speak to everyone. And sometimes I think that gets lost, especially in the Black church. It gets lost. Folks just say anything, and then they tell you, I'm just keeping it real, and they leave you there bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, Reverend Lydell Brown, you are the man. You're the man only because you've been able to break this down in a way. That last verse that you read, say that you quoted. Say that one more time.
That I come not to condemn, but to save.
And then before that, you talked about that other the one.
The well have no need for a physician, for I come for the sick. And we all of us got some sickness when you think about it. I read something the other day that said that 97.3% of all human beings in the human race have some type of issue, some type of mental issue, something that we're dealing with.
Well, we're not perfect, so
no, not at all.
As my grandmother used to say, if you was perfect, what would you need Jesus for? She
Absolutely.
would in a minute. You would not need Jesus if you were perfect.
No.
Do you feel that a lot of the clergy don't deal with experiences or any of the insecurities of broaching the subject because of their own experiences or their own insecurities of broaching the subject of sexuality?
Well, it's getting better. It's getting better.
So some churches I see are, and that's you talked about that fire and brimstone thing earlier. So I mean that's one way that it has been broached, but then I can't help but feeling that in our frailties, that as the shepherd of a church, that I may not want to say anything because I don't want to shake the waters. I don't want to make any kind of waves, and that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because you don't want to speak on one side of it because you got church members who give a lot of money to the church.
Yeah.
So you might not want to say anything. And as you mentioned earlier, you may have people in certain ministries that need you to stick up for them, and they may be in the LGBTQ community, and they're doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what would happen if you offend them? Would they be gone, and then you'd have nobody to do that work? I mean, speak on that for a few minutes on either way, saying something or not saying anything.
Well, I think there's a way to say anything, and let's put it this way. If you're not well versed on it or going to have some grace about you when you speak, then you need to leave it alone, because you can do more harm than good. The other thing is too, you have to know people. And so if there's a conversation I need to have, I'm going to give it the type of respect that I would want. So this is not a conversation in front of everybody. This is a conversation where, we sit in a room, we get a chance to know each other. And so I can know what makes you tick, because I'm at the place in this season of my life, I want to know your story. I had a minister that was under me, and she was a lesbian. And one day I just decided to have a conversation with her. I was saying, what happened? And she told me, and so I can say this because no one knows her name. She told me that she had people in her family that raped her repeatedly over and over and over again as a young girl. And she says, I don't want a man to touch me sexually at all. And when she told me this, I was like, I get it. I get it. And so she said, so am I wrong? I said, no, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I said, but I will tell you that you're going to have to work on that hurt, because that hurt that you're carrying around, those wounds that you're carrying around, I said, you can wound somebody else, not by doing the same thing that was done to you, but you can just wound somebody else because you're hurt and you're wounded. But I think sometimes before we open our mouth, we need to know a person's story. And the only way we can find out a person's story if we sit down, have a conversation and share, let the conversation be two-sided and we share some things.
Yep.
I didn't see that one coming. I mean,
yeah.
That has nothing to do with sexuality. It has to do with just being abused.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Your life experiences. It really impacts, how you react or how you think, and that's, like I say, you're evolving around your life experiences.
That's right.
To some degree.
You can't even being traumatized like that, because that's what that is. That's trauma, being traumatized, and like you said, you hope that she was seeking help for that.
Right. But what happens is that people look outside at the cover and put a label on that right away, instead of having a conversation with this person and finding out that not only is there some stuff there, but they also need for you praying for them. You don't even have to tell them you're praying for them. Lord, I'm just praying for this person's recovery. That's all, But I think sometimes we see someone and we think something about them, and all of a sudden we automatically put them in that bucket, and that's how we leave it.
This is good, concrete community conversation here, right there. I think you said it all when you said you want to know people's story.
That's right.
People feel that you have some empathy for their story and their experiences, then maybe that's a pathway to helping that person. Maybe that's a pathway. And you tell me, Reverend Brown, I don't know, it seems like that would be a pathway to minister to that person. They might want to hear you now.
Yeah. Well, I did something over a 2-year period. And folk, when I first started it, they looked at me like, what are you doing, Pastor? I took one Sunday out of the month. And what I did, I allowed each member of the church to stand before the church, if they wanted to, and give their testimony. This was their story. And that did so much for the church, because now the church was finally able to act like a church. Because we've just seen over the last 2 years that the building's not the church. You know what I mean? It's the people. It's the people. And so what it did, it bridged some gaps. It forged some relationships. Somebody over here said, I went through that very same thing. I mean, it just did a whole lot. And so it was probably around 80 people over a 2-year period that got up and told their story. And then what I didn't realize in it, and this is one of those things that happened by accident, I call it friendly fire, folk got healing from that, who were actually telling the story.
This is like your ministry techniques and practices and beliefs sound to me, I'm going to call it crossover ministry, because what you're talking about that you do, the way you implement your ministry, crosses over to any issue. Sounds like it's a solve for any ministry. So I also got from what you were saying that to help work with people, whatever issues they're going through, the first thing to do is to listen. So I talked about, there's got to be communication, but it sounds like there's a large proportion of listening before there's any talking. What do you think?
Absolutely. Listening is a gift. And we got too many folk that listen so that they can see the window and come in and give their 2 cents. Sometimes it's not even about you giving your 2 cents. Sometimes it's just sitting back, listening, and absorbing. Because I know folk, they do that too. They act like they really want to hear what you're saying, but they just want you to be quiet so that then they can be the great I am and tell you what you need to do to heal yourself. No, sometimes you just, there's this thing that we learned in seminary called the gift of presence, or the ministry of presence. Just being there, listening.
Did I hear you just say that they're trying to play God? Did I just want to make sure that I think that's what I might have heard, that they were trying to play God. Okay. Here's a kind of tough question. What about clergy who are up in the pulpit being the shepherd that, they've gone to school for, they've been called by God? Speaking of which, being called by God, you said you've been in the ministry for 30 years and you've been pastoring for 26. Is that how you said it?
Yes.
So that first 4 years you were just called to God?
Well, in the first 4 years, it's formation. You're trying to find out where you are, and you're in school, and stuff like that. And then after that, the denomination, if you're in a denomination, will say that you've satisfied some things to be given ordination or be given a pastorate someplace. Yeah. So
for those who've been called to preach, I love that old time saying, he was called to preach. Some folks will say, well, called by who?
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess the obvious answer would be called by God. And then the people who are this week, they've been called to preach, but next week they're a bishop. That's a whole nother show. We'll talk about that another time. But I guess I'm really talking about that leadership, that shepherd. And sometimes when these types of topics are being addressed, sometimes they're not addressed, or they are addressed in a negative way by a clergy person who themselves are members of the LGBT community, and they themselves are living the down low. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, I don't even know how to form a question. All I can say is, I believe that there are, and I know that there are people who are gay, who are pastoring churches, mm-hmm. and get up and preach brimstone, fire.
Yep.
What is that? That's that 97% of mental illness. that's what I mean, but that's just my layman's,
Gotcha. But that's hypocrisy. I mean, at the end of the day, I gotta go to sleep with me. I gotta wake up with me. And so, you need to have a conscience, for one thing. I'm not going to speak on anything that I can't apply to myself. But in saying that, this is the reason why in some faith houses, some subjects are never touched.
Yeah. This is what I was getting at. And, mm-hmm. and if they are touched, they're touched in a way that's not helpful. And that's why I want to ask you about that. And I'm glad to hear that. I mean, you seem pretty woke. That's why I wanted you here today. Mm-hmm. Trust me, I did call some other people, other ministers, and the ones that haven't been around as long and didn't do that formation part yet that you talked about, they needed all this lead time to come on here and talk about the philosophy of the church, the beliefs of the church. And I feel really good that we were able to talk to you, because I knew you were going to be able to bring it. So that's why I called you on here. Do you think this cripples the community, and do you think it cripples the church community in particular?
It could have lasting effects. It could have lasting effects. One of the things that I realized right off the bat is that if I fall down today, because folk love me and love the ministry, they might fall down too. This is why, I always tell folk this. I put my shoes on the same way you do. Don't put me up so high that I got so high, so far to fall. Pray for me. If anything, when we look through scriptures, we see that God loved the challenge. When you look at some of the characters in the biblical story, they had some stuff. But we all have some stuff. That's why, the Bible tells us to work out our salvation with fear and with trembling. I mean, all of us got some stuff, and we have a lifetime while God allows us to be here to work some stuff out. But if you're not working on yourself and all you're doing is trying to work on everybody else, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because every time you preach, remember, you got three fingers pointing right back at you.
I like what you said about realizing over the past 2 years that we've learned that the building, the actual church edifice, is not the church.
No.
Speak on how that's touched you in the last couple of years.
It's allowed me to realize that God did not give me a pulpit in the building, but the world is my pulpit.
All right now.
Mm-hmm. We're still virtual. We are still virtual at Burning Bush. Because we were renting, we decided that it was not a good use of the money and not good stewardship to just give away monthly rent payments and not be utilizing the building. All right. And so it seems like now we're getting ready to pivot and go back into a space. But the one thing that has been just mind-boggling to me is that my church has actually doubled in number. And this has just been over Zoom and Facebook and through some other platforms. Because all we've been able to do is just preach the word. Paul said this, he said, I've been taught by the best, but what I do, I just preach Jesus crucified. And so that's what we've been doing. We've just been preaching the good news. And, so many folk have gone through so much, especially during the pandemic. I was reading an article the other day where they said that there are folk now who are now realizing that they have manic, that they're manic, they're bipolar, because all of this stuff has brought it up. Just being afraid, not knowing what tomorrow brings, being stuck inside. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that has happened over these last 2 years. And I think this country, when it finally gets to the place where it wants to take a good look at mental health, it's going to shock everybody, because I think that we got some stuff going on in this country that's not really being looked at.
Yeah, I agree.
I know you got to leave in a few minutes, but if you give me 2-3 more minutes,
sure.
A little bit longer than that, I have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done some of this already, but if you could, help us out a little bit further for the kings who are out here listening now, the kings to be, and we want to hear that good, concrete conversation. I like people to be able to write things down. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Do you have any solution points or ideas or suggestions? You've been saying some all along, but you can even reiterate some of them, so that I'm not asking you to cure the ills of the world, but any suggestions for churches that may have folks in their church that are feeling like they're not heard, they're unseen, and maybe facing some church hurt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What say you?
I think small groups work in a church. I once had someone, and I'd probably get in trouble for this, but I had someone tell me years ago that there's going to come a time when the mega church is going to be a mausoleum. That we're going to be taking tours through these mega churches saying, so this is how we used to worship? All these seats and all this room. How did people get help if they needed help? You know, and then sometimes people like to go to large churches to get lost in the crowd.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just get nobody bother me. But when you get lost in the crowd, you also can't be helped. You know? So in the local church, you want hands-on. You want to forge relationships. You want the pastor to be able to look at you and say, hey, brother so-and-so, hey, sister so-and-so. It's impossible to know everybody's name in the mega church. And I understand that you have executive pastors and mid-pastors and youth pastors and music pastors. I understand all that. But we need to have hands-on, especially after what we've just gone through. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I think that the biggest thing is that we need to have small groups. And then the other thing is, too, pastors need to get to know other pastors. I started a council here in the city of Waterbury called the Concerned Clergy Council of Waterbury. It was around 20 pastors. In its heyday, it was around 30 pastors. And one of the things I used to say at every single meeting, I said, y'all do understand that we're just one good argument from disbanding. And so you got to be able to leave ego at the door, because it's tough. You know, you got all these pastors there, and all of them say, I'm the pastor, such and such. I went to a retreat, and when we got there, they said something that messed everybody up. They said, leave your title at the door. There are no titles here. You come in. If your name is Ed, you're Ed. You're not Pastor Ed, you're Ed. Your name is Lydell, you're not Pastor Lydell, you're Lydell. And it helped us just deal with the person, you know? Yeah.
And, you know, the things that you just said just now would seem like that would be not common sense, but make sense to think about and to go ahead and process and carry on your business. Because, I mean, I hear a lot of church people who are more transactional than they are transformational. And what you just said just now, the smaller groups, forging relationships, and pastors getting to know one another, and checking, number one should be checking that ego at the door. Because if you're going to be transformational, this is me preaching now, don't mind me. If you're going to be transformational, of course the ego should not be involved, because you're in service. I think if some of these pastors who are out here and doing fire and brimstone could come to the point of, how can I best be in service? And I can't best be in service if I'm alienating people.
That's right.
Okay, so these small groups you're talking about, this intimacy, that promotes that. Pastors meeting pastors, that promotes that. The workshop or the conference you went to, those types of things promote that. And by the way, when you talked about you might get in trouble, you're like John Lewis, like me. We always getting into good trouble.
There you go. There you go.
So and before you leave, I want to make a statement. The word listen has the same letters that the word silent has.
I might. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat just said service, like we're having church service. Hey, that's okay. I always say if we end up having church service, may I be the one to pass the collection plate.
Yeah.
So I want to know.
Good talking to you. Yeah, it's like you say, it's all about conversation and learning and sharing each other's knowledge.
That's right.
So that you can, address issues in different perspectives and, just be yourself.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you for being of service with us here today. I appreciate you more than you know. I love you because of all the things that you said and you did. And hopefully you can come back and visit us again on King's Corner for the rest of your evening. Have peace.
You do the same. This has definitely been a blessing.
Thank you.
All right.
Good.
Ways, man. Take care.
You too.
Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm just looking, Ralph, I was just looking in the chat, and someone says, how can I be of service if I'm alienating people? So that's well said, they said. Then someone else said, the person devoid of a title is just being a human. They're just being a human being. So we got some people in the chat that really like that term church hurt. And I stole that from somebody, and I thought that's really impactful, that folk feel like they've suffered church hurt. In this particular story, they were talking about how, you know, it's actually a true story. So it's fictionalized history, or history that's been fictionalized. And there was a transsexual woman at church, and the pastor went up to the not the podium, the
altar.
The altar, thank you, and said, "Would the man in the purple dress please leave my sanctuary?" You know, blasted it out there, and then had ushers escort them out. And the story goes on that they went to a bar after that, and there were 3, I want to say, teenage or adolescent kids that were with this person, and all of them were invited to and treated very well at the bar. So that's a sad day when a bar will accept you, even children, before a church will. So that's something to actually think about.
We got to work on that.
We got a lot of work in the community to do, and that's the other thing about King's Corner that I liked, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show is because I want us to look at ourselves and take accountability for the things that we do to one another, because truly we have to treat each other better.
Yeah.
All of us are not the same. We're not going to be the same. And what a boring world this would be if we look the same, we act the same, we thought the same. I would be bored myself. I don't know about you.
Yeah, because they say variety is the spice of life and everything. But I think some of this goes back to slavery days and the fact that we all come from the same place. You know, we're from all different parts of Africa, and we never was allowed to really gel and be one people. So we're constantly dealing with, all those issues from them. People get into, the color of the skin, your hair and all that other stuff.
And we also need to think about community, those who are within listening earshot of us here today on King's Corner, that, remember, religion itself was introduced on the plantation as a way to control the enslaved person. We have to remember it was used as a tool. We also have to remember that the Bible that was given to us was a redacted Bible. What they didn't want us to read about how there should be brotherly love and we should treat each other accordingly, that was redacted from the Bible, because then they would have to make some sense out of enslaving us. So if that was done, imagine what else was done to edit the Bible. For the people who are Bible thumpers and verse callers and who live strictly by what was written by another man and edited by other men, we have to be very careful that, God gave us whatever God's pronouns are. God gave us free will and a mind to think and to make decisions and to know what's right and wrong. So, how many of the enslaved people knew that what they were reading and how they were being indoctrinated into Christianity, that some of that was redacted? They didn't know that. So how do we know today that everything that we see there? What about the lost books of the Bible? What about that?
Yeah.
So it's all something to be very careful about. And all these books that are being banned right now, those are the books you need to go and read.
Right. because they're telling the true story.
Telling the true story. There's a reason why folk don't want you to read that stuff. There's a reason why, I mean, certain books from the Bible probably have been, and I say probably because I don't know, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a religious scholar, but I've heard tell that some of the books are not there and that they've been elected to come out. Who made that decision? Why did they make those decisions? So I challenge the listenership to not be low information seekers, especially if you're using that information and it's predicated upon hate and separating us from one another here in our community. Whew, that was a mouthful. I'm tired.
Hey, it's a subject matter that brings out a lot of thought and provoking actions in some respect.
Somebody here in the chat room says, religion is all about control. It's spirituality that we must be focused on. Oh, that's another show too. But
yeah,
I hear you. That's
loud and clear.
That was Queen D. And LaShawn says King James made these decisions in the King James version of the Bible when I started talking about the editing that went on.
Right.
You think religion is a form of control, or at one time it was? What do you think now? I think it is. That's my opinion.
I think it is too, because you're not say you're forced, but you're following the word of a given individual or a given religion or whatever. You know, it's something that is, you know, it's instilled in you, but it's also the fact that people go into it blindly thinking that, you know, that's the way. And in many respects, that's not the way.
Okay, so I feel like we just did a physical workout.
Yeah, we did a lot of things. And I have a few words of wisdom I'd like to share.
Well, we got 4 more minutes, man, or 4.5, 3.5 more minutes. And I need to, when I work out, to cool down. What do they call it? When you work out, you need to do a cool down. Let's do
cool down.
Let's do that by using our words of wisdom. Go ahead, man.
Well, one of them is, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. And if you're at peace, you're living in the moment, the present.
Okay. And that's why they call the present, right? I got one. Let's do a round robin here. Here's mine. Draw on the strength of who you are. Stand in the strength of what you know. Okay. You got nothing?
My last one is keep calm and be crazy. Laugh, love, and live it up, because this is the oldest you've ever been and the youngest you'll ever be again.
So that reminds me of that eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die.
No promises for tomorrow.
So here's one. The world will ask you who you are. And if you don't know, the world will tell you.
Yeah, they definitely will tell you.
That kind of links back to like today. I've often heard folks say, don't let somebody else give you your narrative, tell you who you are. And so I sure don't want the world to do that. We know who we are. And if we don't, it's our task to seek out who we are. Got one more. Got 1 minute. Climb the mountain so you can see the world, not so the world can see you. Okay. Okay.
That's, yeah.
King's Corner is about that. We climbed a mountain today. We want to be able to see the world, and we want people to see the world here on King's Corner. And like I said in the beginning, this show was not about us. It was about.
No, it's not about us. Like I say, it's about getting information out to the public and basically sharing our ideas or information that we come in contact with so that other people can really think and make decisions for themselves as well as act on information that they receive.
Hey, Ralph, thank you for helping me out today on King's Corner. Everybody out there in the chat room listening to us virtually, thanks for joining us on King Corner.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And again, we're going into a situation for the cook-off, and we'd like people to submit nominations.
We ran out of time.
Good show.
I'm tired, man. Tell you what. Yeah, I should have called this. I should have closed it before I did. Sorry.
That's all right. I had a big situation when you were gone, so I understand totally.